This podcast is called Just Wingin It because we have wings, we have hot wings, but hotter questions. All right. So first we have our youth pastor Josiah Cha. Before we start, is there anything you want to say about yourself or anything, some information on you, just a general information?
Well, if you don't know me, or if you're new, maybe to just watching this for the first time, I just came to Orlando about 8 months ago. It's been only 8 months. I'm studying at seminary, and I came down from Virginia. Made a pretty drastic change in my career from pursuing medicine to now pursuing full-time pastoral ministry. And I have the huge honor and privilege of serving as a youth director for Harvest Youth for now and for hopefully a long time in the future. But yeah.
All right. So we have, we're going to go through kind of 9 questions, one of them not really being a question. And before we answer each question, we're going to eat a hot wing. And each interval, it's going to get hotter and hotter, and the questions are going to get hotter and hotter. So with the first one, let's take our first bite. And so,
where are these wings from? They look
these
pretty
wings.
familiar.
This podcast is sponsored by Wings of Winter Garden.
Woo! Best wings in Florida.
Best wings in Florida, hands down.
Hands down.
And so
what?
Cheers, brother.
Cheers, bro. What sauce is this?
Our first sauce is Old Florida hot sauce.
Oh.
I'm going whole wing.
No, I'm going whole wing.
So we have to make this pack now. Are we gonna do whole wing all the way down?
Let's do it.
Oh man.
Even
All
if it
right.
means we suffer.
First wing down. So when we were
Not
preparing for this idea of eating hot wings, you were telling me that you don't do so well with hot food, right? So in honor of eating these hot wings, what is the worst thing or weirdest thing that you've ever had to eat?
Man, worst food. Probably I'm just kidding, not last week. I can answer weirdest food. I'm a very not picky eater, so I'm really happy with McDonald's. But I've had some weird food growing up overseas. They have different kinds of delicacies that are very foreign to us. I grew up helping our landlords kill and slaughter sheep and chicken and goats and cows and all that stuff. So the whole 9 yards, I helped them to kind of skin and gut and bleed. But over there, they consider cow tongue and cow hooves, and then different organs like the liver, the spleen, to be delicacies, as well as like part of the private parts. So those were things that like were not very, there's a reason why we don't eat that in the US, but that was a little weird. Another one was when I was in North Korea about 4 years ago, I did eat pigeon heart, and I ate dog meat too. So I'm so sorry I'm a dog lover too, but that's what they offered us, and I didn't want to be disrespectful. I think one of the strangest things that I've eaten was in Cambodia. When I was there, I ate tarantulas, crickets, and a really big cicada. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that as we were going through Facebook, we have a video. Sulin, if you want to throw up a video for us.
Dude, this guy's so big. All right. It's like eyes are like.
Ew, stop!
Okay.
Ew. Daddy! Josiah's eating it! Ew, don't throw up.
I'm okay. It's just really.
Yummy?
It's okay. It's like the shell is like crunchy.
Oh my gosh. Daddy! Daddy, come here!
I have to finish it.
What?
with our next sauce is some hot pepper garlic grapefruit. So it doesn't sound too bad. Are you a flats kind of person, or do you like drumsticks?
No. Yeah, drumstick all the way.
Drumsticks? All right.
Yeah. Pretty good flavor.
A little bit spicier.
A little bit spicier, yeah.
It's getting there.
It's getting there.
All right, so question number 2. Like you said earlier, it's almost coming up to a full year here in Orlando. So what are some of the best things about Orlando, and what are some things that you miss back from home? Is there differences between the people or from here or there or anything like that?
Great question. All right, so again, to reiterate, I came to Orlando 8 months ago. Virginia is kind of my home for the past 8 years. Grew up in the mission field before that for about 10 years, but yeah, I consider Virginia as like where I was most recently. Orlando I really, really love Orlando. 2018 for me last year was pretty rough, right until I came to Orlando. And ever since then, it's been amazing. So the people are, in general, if I can make generalizations, Orlando people are a little bit more chill and down to earth. They're not as uptight, a little more flexible, not very like dramatic. Whereas maybe people in Virginia, I think the very nature of DC draws people who are very ambitious and competitive. And so sometimes that comes out in the ways we interact at church or when we hang out even in sports and whatnot. So sometimes it's nice to get away from a culture that's always kind of gunning for everything. So the people here they've been very nice. I could say about Harvest in particular, the community has been really hospitable, and I think I've been surprised about how quickly and how well I was integrated into Harvest as a community. So I'm really grateful for that. And yeah, people even dress a little differently here too, but for the most part, I think it comes down to like the personality.
It's the weather.
It's the weather.
Yeah, for sure. It's chill down here, right? Cold and
it is
cold.
I miss the cold. See, that's the one thing I do miss is like that Ryan brought up. I love wearing jackets. If you haven't noticed, I use every excuse to wear a jacket. I love snowboarding and I love the snow. So I grew up with all of that in Kyrgyzstan, and so I do miss a lot of that. Here it's pretty hot and humid. Now I do love Orlando is traffic is not as bad, even though it can be horrendous at times at rush hour, but the beaches are like a hop, skip, and step away. So you could take a drive out to the beach if you wanted to. I do that pretty often just to like get away, read some books, spend time praying or just like reflecting. And food here is pretty good.
Compared to DC? Really?
Yeah, there's different kind of, I don't know, there's different cuisines. I'm not picky, like I said before, so, I mean, they don't have Wings of Winter Garden up in DC, so, yeah.
Nice. All right, so we'll just jump into question number 3. This sauce, sriracha heat.
Sriracha heat.
Sriracha heat. Remember, don't eat into the mic, apparently.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't want to get Chanu to start tearing up during worship.
He already does that. At what time is it like okay to drink something? Because I'm getting pretty close.
I'm getting close.
All right, so question number 3. What is one thing that you want people to know about you? Whether they know it already or not, what do you want to be remembered or kind of like known by?
Off the bat, like there are externalities that people kind of notice right away. I'm more tall, on the taller side.
Thanks.
The things I like to do is like, play ball, spend time reading or things like that, spend time with people. So that's always good if people can know that I'm passionate about those things, especially when it comes to ministry, whether it's meeting with people or being able to lead worship. Even though I'm not great at it, I just love and have the passion for it. But then there are also parts of me that sometimes maybe people don't see or don't understand. And yeah, I think one thing that you may not know unless you're pretty close to me is I'm a pretty sensitive guy. And I say that in a positive and negative way. So I can cry. I'll cry a lot, actually. You guys have seen me cry once already when I spoke in a message, but sometimes, usually, and most often, it's just when I'm really touched by the Holy Spirit. So if it's during worship, especially if it's David Platt preaching and I'm listening to his sermon, I'll burst out in tears. A lot of times when I'm driving and I'm listening to like maybe some of my obscure favorite Christian music, I'll start getting the feels, especially if it's the right time of the day where it's like at night or about to get down tonight, so sunset. Then I might cry. That's probably the most hidden part of me is that, yeah.
Nice. I did say one thing, but we'll go with that. So we got height, which is obvious, sensitive. We'll just jump into the next question. This one is the classic hot sauce from Hot Ones, the actual YouTube channel.
Ooh.
Actually, all of these have been used in multiple episodes or seasons of Hot Ones. Throwing it out there just
Awesome.
so
Thanks for buying it, Ryan.
we don't get sued for copyright or anything. Hot Ones, completely their idea.
Their idea. Thanks for buying it.
Ready?
Yeah.
Also, you have to be careful. Oh, wow. You have to be careful with your eyes.
Yeah.
Make sure you don't touch your eyes. All right, so.
Oh, is it okay, Dr. Pyun, if we touch our eyes with
Yeah, we got a
Can we use
doctor.
that for like contact lens solution? No. Okay.
So, question number 4. So, for 10 years, right, you lived in Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan from ages 6 to about 16. This definitely probably gave you a more like worldly view, like a wider world view. What is some of the best and worst parts of growing up overseas, moving constantly and being engaged with different cultures, peoples, languages, cuisines, things like that?
Yeah, so I moved at the age of 6, as Ryan mentioned. So I was really young, and I didn't understand what was going on, like why we were going overseas, or even where we were going. All I knew was that we were giving up my friends and McDonald's, which is like, that was the love of my life. Oh, man. Now, Uzbekistan is a third world country, and we lived in Samarkand, which is a gorgeous city, but it's also one that hasn't been very much exposed to foreigners. So it was different and new for the Uzbeks and the local people there to see someone like me in their classroom. So when I went to Russian school and Uzbek school, often along the way when I was walking to school, I was made fun of a lot. People would say, like, go back to China. When my brother and I would walk to school, kids would throw rocks at us, and then even after school, we would get beaten up, or like during lunch period, they'd take us behind school and beat us up, just because we looked different. And so at the ages of like 8 and 9 was when we really experienced the full like thrust of that. And that was tough. You know, if you're an 8, 9, 10-year-old and you're being beaten up for really no reason, and there's really no one who's sticking up for you, it's very natural, I think, to become bitter and mad. And so that, that target of bitterness and hatred turned to those boys who beat us up, but also a lot of blame fell upon my parents because we blamed them for taking us overseas and for making us give us a comfortable life in America, in Virginia, to love a people that really didn't like us, clearly, that didn't like me. But beyond that, as things got worse, a lot of hatred and bitterness was directed towards God because my parents kept saying, we're here in Uzbekistan to serve God, to obey Him, to love the people, and to share the gospel with them about how Jesus saved them. So I feel like at an early age, I got maybe like a Jonah vibes, just like, God, how could you forgive these people that really hate me? And so for a long time, that was part of my testimony, is like for years I was very bitter towards the people there and bitter towards especially God. So for like the first 6 years of my time there, very bitter, yeah, towards God. So that was a huge negative aspect of just living overseas. That was like the toughest part, was just interacting with other kids my age and their sinful natures and my sinful nature. But there are a lot of awesome things that were in Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan too that you can't experience here in America. So for example, like for science class, instead of always learning from a textbook, we got to go outside, we got to go fishing a lot, we got to go help our neighbors kill chickens, help them give birth to like lambs. And so all those processes were really cool in learning like hands-on that you may not learn, in the classroom here. The food is really good. So they have really good like bread that they make themselves. It's kind of shaped like a little frisbee. And they call it naan. And we also eat their national dish, which is osh, and it's like fried rice, but we eat it with our hands because that's how they do it. So you kind of use your hands to kind of cup the rice, and then you bring it to you. And it's super messy, but that's just how you do it. And then
That's how I eat at home anyways.
that's how you saw me eat when I was staying at your house. Yeah. So that, and just like the really cool thing was when you're a teenager, like here in America, if you want to hang out with your friends, either your parents have to drive you or you have to get your license or permit to be able to drive because it's too far to bus or walk to see your friends, usually. Now in Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, everything is really congested and close. And so my brother and I, we would always take buses around the city, we'd walk around, and it's only like 5 cents to get anywhere in the city you want. So we would always, we had a lot of independence, and then we can go wherever we wanted to. And that was really cool. It helped us, I think, mature pretty quickly and kind of gain some street knowledge.
Nice. I don't know about you, but my lips are like tingling.
My lips are tingling. My tongue is tingling. And I feel like I have to clear my throat.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a break here. We're not going to eat a wing, but we are going to do something a little bit different. It's called the social media deep dive. All right, so what I was able to do was I went into Josiah's Facebook, and I went to the archives and found some old photos.
Oh, man.
And so within those photos, I found some Harvest alumni that we know, all right? There was a lot of ministry photos, a lot of one-on-one photos with Josiah and girls, a bunch of sports photos. And so I think it really described him. So we're going to look at a few photos. So if you want to throw up the first photo, you talk about being good at basketball, but if you look, I believe that's an illegal moving screen there, which is a foul. If you go to the second photo, true or false, did you get blocked in this photo? Did you get blocked?
Man. Well, the first photo, actually, if you go back, for a while, I didn't know how to set screens too well. Like, I just set it with a really wide base, which I think they will call it as a moving screen because it's too big of a base. And so, like, players have to, like, jump around you. So here in this picture, this was at a 3v3 tournament in Virginia. We were playing these guys to get to the semifinals, and then they broke our best player's nose. But this dude was tall. It's very, very possible, and maybe highly likely I was blocked here.
All right, if you go to the next photo, last basketball photo. As you all know, hand down, man down. That's some poor defense, if you ask me. But I see some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle uniforms. What about this? Was this another basketball tournament?
Yeah, this is me closing out at full speed. It was another 3v3 tournament. I'm proud to say that we did win this whole tournament out of 32 teams. But yeah, my defense is probably my worst part of the game.
Well, if you ask me, I have played with Josiah. He is a lot better than I'm picturing him as, but that's what this is all about. He's a great basketball player. All right, so if you see the next photo, another sport one, volleyball. Question: did you save his soul? That's the real question. You blocked his shot, but did you save his soul?
These kind of situations, I don't think, unfortunately, there's a comeback for that. So after that, no. This is actually in Pyongyang, in North Korea.
Yeah, so like when I was looking at this, I was like, oh, it's just like a pickup game. If you go to the next photo, this is mad official, yo. You got like so many people watching. This literally looks like a scene from the interview.
Yeah. Yeah, volleyball is not really my sport. I'm just tall, so I can do a little bit. But so volleyball, the biggest sport right now in North Korea is soccer, as you might have guessed. But volleyball is up and coming, and also basketball. And so a couple years ago, actually, the North Korean basketball team beat the South Korean national basketball team. Crazy. But here, yeah, this was after our medical school conference that we had with North Korean medical students. And after the conference, they really wanted to play volleyball, like really badly. So they saw that I was taller than everyone, so they said, "Oh, you must be good." So they asked me to play, and about 100 people were watching.
Wow. And you said this was in North Korea, right?
North Korea.
Yeah, so just to clarify, if you go to the next photo, are you a North Korean spy? What is this hard repping of North Korea on the wall, man?
Oh yeah, that's okay. So that was my room in college. I did purchase a North Korean flag when I was in North Korea, kind of a souvenir. But I think I still have it. I don't know if I brought it down to Orlando or not. But I always put it on my wall, just so that if it's the first thing I see in the morning, it's something I remind myself to pray for that country. But yeah, actually, the people I went with, who kind of went pretty often to North Korea for medical missions, they were actually pressed by our government and their government, just about like what's the nature of your business. So yeah, I'm not a spy though. I think I would be a horrible spy. Yeah, I don't even know how to tie my shoes correctly.
All right, serious stuff, but that's good. It's good work that you were doing down there. So next photo. It looks like a college photo. Is that a jewel in your mouth? What's going on? Are you the inventor of Jewel? So the question here is, what are your views on like vaping or e-cigarettes or something like that from a medical standpoint?
Okay, medical standpoint. Gotcha. Well, to clarify,
That's not a Jewel. That's like a USB drive or something, right?
I think that's or a pen. I always put pens in my mouth, and I always either have something in my mouth, like gum or a pen or a guitar pick, or I always have something in my hands. I just have to have something. I was that kid growing up in elementary school that was a nightmare to teachers. I just couldn't sit still. So that was me. Great question about jewels and smoking. Yeah, I have never. So these are my views, and we'll actually talk about this in a couple weeks. In our SNF sermon series, in Drinking Deeply, about drinking and alcohol and substances. But I've never smoked any form of anything, and I've actually also never really drank, except for like communion. So that's not because I try to deem myself as like holier than other people. It's because I think I've seen firsthand a lot of the effects of a lot of these substances. So in college, for 3 years, I worked in this research lab at UVA Med School with this pulmonologist, and we did research on COPD, which is probably the main and primary disease you contract when you're a chronic smoker. And so a lot of the research that we did was involving looking at different drugs and the resistance that genes had to them. But we had to smoke these mice. It was really sad. We had all these mice, and we would smoke them about a rate of 9 cigarettes per minute. So that's a lot. So they're just inhaling cigarettes all the time, cigarette smoke, and then I would just cut open their bodies and take out their heart and their lungs, and then we would look at how the drugs would react with those blackened lungs and hearts. But I've seen from the effects of all that research, like what smoking, but also marijuana does to the body. Some of it is used for medical purposes, but there are forms of marijuana that's like THC that doesn't have really the detrimental effects and the addictive effects of nicotine and other substances in there that can help with your medical illnesses and conditions. That's not the form of marijuana as we know it. And so I think that's a better alternative than using weed as an excuse to cover any medical conditions you have. And that's being developed further in the market. So yeah, at this point, it's kind of like that excuse isn't too valid. I think, yeah, weed can become a dangerous gateway drug. Not that it will destroy your life completely, but an analogy is kind of like when you're dating a girl and you start holding hands, it doesn't just stop there. It leads to popo, like kissing on the cheek, and then it leads to more stuff. And so with marijuana, that's the issue, is once you expose yourself to something like smoking like that, then you start going down this steep slope.
Next photo. You did graduate from UVA, but you graduated injured.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit what happened, why you were on crutches at your graduation?
Oh, this is embarrassing. Yeah, that was tough because this graduation, I don't really like it. I don't like really graduations, but you have to walk around a lot for college graduations, and everyone wants to take pictures with you. The week before graduation, my friends and I from our Christian fellowship, we went on a beach trip. It was our class of seniors, graduating seniors, and we kind of met up with another class, like sophomores, I think, or freshmen, who were also in the same vicinity at the beach for their beach trip. And for some reason, we decided to have a wrestling match, right? And so, I didn't really want to wrestle because I'm not very good and I'm not very aggressive, but they called my name and they threw me into the middle against this one guy my age, or my height, my build. But yeah, he basically, I think he threw me down pretty hard in front of all the girls. And I think I pulled my hamstring or something, but I injured it pretty bad. So I couldn't walk, and it was really embarrassing.
Man.
Thanks, Ryan.
So that's the point of these. We're trying to see the deeper story.
This
I
is,
was not aware of this.
If you want to wrestle me, you're probably going to make me tap out in a couple seconds.
Well, if you go in summer missions, that's something that our guys love to do.
All right, we're going to do it.
For some reason during downtime. All right, so just to save on time, we'll skip this next photo. But if you want to just quickly go, there's some other funny photos that we saw. We won't really get into too much detail on those, but some funny photos. But last question and last photo, when is your mixtape dropping, my guy?
I have that picture on Facebook. I can show you guys that later. That's 14-year-old Josiah. Okay, so freshman Josiah. I had just composed and produced an album that I made on piano. So if you guys want to hear that later too, you can. It's not very good. But my friend was really excited for me, my best friend, and so he liked photography. So he took a picture. It was very artsy, and he wanted me to look very he's very Korean. So a lot of that, those vibes of just Unima was really big back then. And so just being really somber and giving them the kind of a really serious stare. That was in, so.
Yeah, I like the names. We got Darkness, Not Alone Today. What was it? Reward, Obedience. I like them.
Thanks,
I like them.
man.
I would love to hear this.
Oh, man.
This
Okay.
mixtape. All right, so now we're going into our second half of the race. We're going to go, we're pretty close on time, but we should be good. But it gets only hotter from here.
Yeah.
I think that was a good break for me. So if you want to
That was
just
a good break
jump
for
in. You ready? These get hot, man. We doing a whole wing? Are you sure?
Yeah, we're holding.
All right, so question number 6. You ready? Mm-hmm. So over this year, what has been your favorite thing about being mentored by Pastor DL? What has been the most difficult thing? So favorite thing, difficult thing, and are there any secrets that he taught you or any secrets about him that no one knows?
Okay. Favorite thing about being mentored by Pastor DL? Definitely one of the reasons why I came from Virginia to Orlando was for the opportunity to be mentored by Pastor DL. And yeah, there's no pastor I've ever met that's like him, that does ministry the way he does, that does life the way he does, that preaches the way he does. The biggest thing that I've seen from him is just the way he prays, and it's really, really amazing. So this is one of my favorite stories that I've encountered about Pastor D.L., and I've shared with some of you before, but in Virginia, we have this college retreat called Servants Retreat, and it's about 350 college students from all over Virginia, Korean Americans and the like. This past fall, in about October, November, they asked Pastor D.L. to come speak, right? And Pastor IJ, who runs Servants Retreat, he sends the full roster to everyone so that they can pray for upcoming people who are coming out. So I remember the day before Pastor D.L. was leaving it to go to Virginia for a Servants Retreat to speak, I asked Pastor D.L., or I told him that there are a couple of youth students who I had taught from my last church, Mason and Angelique, who I told him to go hit up Pastor D.L. and ask him for like any questions to field any questions that they might have, because he's really wise. And without skipping a beat, he was like, "Oh, Mason, Jun, and Angelique know?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, have you met them?" I was really surprised. I'm not too surprised because Pastor D.L. knows a lot of people and he has good memory. But he said, "No, I haven't met them, but I've been praying for them for a long time." And that blew my mind. And I hope that doesn't escape you, because what that means is that he has been praying for 350 college students he's never met for a long time, that he can recognize their last names. People he's never met. And that's crazy. And so, if you come to Wednesday prayer meeting, you'll see how much he prays. If you come to morning prayer, we pray for about an hour and a half, and then we dismiss ourselves on our own, usually after an hour 15. But if you come back around, he's still praying there. He's the last one. He's praying by himself. And he'll always text me like, "Hey, I'm praying for you," and stuff like that. Another really small thing, it's a smaller thing, is that I'm really impressed by Pastor D.L. is like, say we're talking in his office and someone knocks in and says hi and they talk for 5 minutes, he's able to pick up the conversation right where it left off. So he has really good memory in terms that like he's a good listener. So he remembers exactly what we were talking about. There's no like, what were we talking about again? But he continues with it right away. It just shows that how intensely he listens and he's there in his presence. The hardest part about being with Pastor D.L. though is like, yeah, it's like, being with like the greatest basketball player ever, and then just looking at yourself and like how you airball all the time. Like that's just, I feel like with me and Pastor D.L., it's just like, I respect him a lot, and then sometimes it's hard not to compare like my preaching with his, or the way he shepherds or counsels, or the way he like is able to like really rally people and get them excited about stuff in the way I'm not able to. But I think it's nothing of his fault. It's just my sinful nature just coming in and comparing.
So we'll just jump into these. Like this is where it gets hot.
Okay.
Like, these were hot, but like
I'm having difficulty a little bit.
Unbearable is like this. It's right here.
Oh, I feel it a lot.
My mouth is getting really hot.
All right, so we got to ask. Well, your mouth's on fire. I remember from your testimony, which I never knew before, you were paralyzed at 13. How did you handle that situation, physically, but also spiritually and mentally?
Wait, can you repeat the question?
Oh God. When you were paralyzed at 13, how did you handle that situation physically, spiritually, and mentally?
Okay. So continuing, you know how I was like pretty bitter towards God after, just a lot of negative experiences at Russian school. That continued, and it was even further exacerbated when I it's hard to talk. When I got a neurodegenerative disease at the age of 13, which turned into full-blown paralysis, waist down, which I mentioned. I shared my testimony when I first came to Harvest. At the age of 13, it's kind of hard to always fathom what's going on fully, and especially to just reconcile God's goodness with your current state of sickness. So my bitterness towards God and my hatred towards Him just didn't make sense. If God claimed to be good, here was my logic. If God was good and He loved me, why didn't He heal me? Because if He didn't want me to see in this state of being paralyzed, He would intervene. But because He wasn't, it was getting worse, then that means either He did love me, but He wasn't all-powerful, or He was all-powerful, but He didn't love me, or He just simply didn't exist. And so at the age of 13, I fell into, I think, pretty deep depression. There's this aspect of when you're handicapped and very reliant and dependent on other people for basic functions, that you lose what we call in like medicine part of your human dignity. And so, just like your self perspective, like if you need someone to always wipe you after you use the bathroom, or if you always create a mess on yourself involuntarily and someone has to clean you up, that creates like a huge, just negative image towards yourself that you exert on yourself. And so, just like, I think spiritually there is just this aspect of like a lot of demonic voices just talking to me. The three things that they always told me were, there is no hope. Clearly God does not love you, and you're going to die. And so those three thoughts are just always like recycling over and over in my head. So I lived those months just like thinking there's no hope for my current state. It's getting worse. God doesn't exist. He doesn't love me, and death is very soon and inevitable. And if it is, then why continue suffering in my state with shame and just and pain? So on April 17th, which is actually coming up soon, 2007, next Wednesday it's coming up, at a women's prayer meeting, I couldn't run away, so they stretched me on the floor and they prayed for me, and I fell asleep. I thought it was like, this is so stupid. And 2 hours later, they asked me to stand up, and I stood up, and I thought I was dreaming. There's no way prayer could work, because for the past month and months it wasn't working. So why now? And I just remember running to the bathroom, and I collapsed by the toilet bowl, and I just started like weeping, and the kind of like kumur, weeping, where it's just like all the snot is coming out, and I know, Rachel, ew. I'm just kidding. But it was there at the toilet bowl that I heard Jesus speak to me for the first time. And He said three things. I am your hope, I do love you, and I am your life. And those three phrases completely reverse all the darkness that the demons had been, and myself had just been hammering into myself for the past few months. And so definitely with the physical state change, that helped me to find joy. But that was tough.
You're handling this a lot better than I am. My mouth is on fire.
Yeah,
right
my
now.
mouth is it's tingling a lot. It's hard to speak.
All right. You want to read off what that second to last sauce is? Maybe you can reach that. I can't really reach that. What kind of sauce is this?
The all-natural zombie apocalypse sauce. Awesome. Accidentally healthy, intentionally delicious.
I'm gonna rub more sauce on yours. There.
Oh man.
All right. Oh, this one doesn't even taste good.
It said delicious. I think it's kicking in.
It's like a back of the throat burn. Last year you were interviewing at medical schools, but now you're here in Orlando, studying at seminary and serving as our youth pastor. Still saving lives, right? But what was the career change like? And what were some lessons learned? Do you feel as God still used that time well, or was it almost like a waste of time?
Oh man, that's spicy. Yeah, if we revisit Josiah a year ago, you would find me in the ER, and kind of hoping to hear back from med schools after I interviewed. Actually, no. At this time last year, I had changed my career path. But last year in March was when God really took my medical route that I had pursued for 7 years. Ooh. And he made it pretty clear through his call, just like that, my calling was not to medicine, but instead to ministry and seminary. So, yeah, that was tough, and I was really hoping for VCU Med, and I was waitlisted, and then rejected, yeah, that was a really hard blow to my ego, to my pride, and I knew that was a closed door to medicine for me, because I think earlier that year God granted me an MCAT score and an interview to VC Med School that I didn't deserve, and so I knew that if this was the best shot, that this was like God making it very clear that this door he opened and closed is really final. So, oh man. Yeah, I just remember that right after I found out that I was rejected from VCU Med, it was Good Friday. So I drove to church, and I brought my guitar with me, and I was sitting in service, and I was just like not having it. I didn't stand up during worship. I don't think I was really paying attention during the sermon, and yeah, I just remember thinking like the dreams I've pursued, this life that I've wanted to live for my whole life, is coming crashing to ground. So where do I go from here? And I took my guitar into a classroom, and I just sang worship songs for about 2 hours. And I was singing the song like Fountains, and Came to Our Rescue. And when I got to that song, there's that verse where it says, my whole life I place in your hands, God of mercy, humbled I bow down. And I just started like crying. And I was like, you know what, God, I'm just going to surrender my whole life to you. And it's not about my dreams or what I want to do, but may it be your will. And whatever you entrust me with, may I be faithful to that. That was really tough. That was really, really tough. And it was like, it was like wrestling God for a long time, and finally just like tapping out. And so for a while, I just really struggled. If I could like put an analogy to it, it's like breaking up with a girl, but then seeing her like all the time. Especially because I kept working the ER for right up until like before I came to Orlando. And so when I told my coworkers that I was giving up medicine and med school to go to seminary, they're all kind of like, what the heck, you're so close to med school, you can just try again. Next year you can interview. But so I had to tell them like, yeah, my kind of choice doesn't really make sense. It's not very reasonable. It's called what in economics is called sunk costs, where you invest so much time and energy into this one maybe project that you're kind of like digging your own grave further, that it only makes sense to go like deeper because you invested so much, the sacrifice is so huge. And so that's how I felt with medicine, that this career I've pursued for 7 years is just going to waste. I feel like if you guys know the story of Jacob and finding Rachel, I feel like I worked for 7 years to get Rachel, but I got Leah instead. I don't know if you know that story, but I just kind of felt like God cheated me. Like, I worked so hard for this, God. I worked so hard for this. How could you take this from me? But now, sitting here at RTS, like, sometimes in class, I'll just like, my professor's like preaching or reading this passage, and I'll just like start crying. And I'm just like so thankful that like that God saved me, but also like that what I'm learning in seminary is just like I don't think I'd rather learn anything else. And so, while part of me really misses like medicine and the ER, like I think God has made it so clear that His plan was so much better than I could have done. I don't think I would have been a great doctor. I think I would just done an okay job, and I think He can use me a lot better for His kingdom, through seminary than through medicine. So changing careers was tough. I remember like at my old church, there are a lot of young adults. There's like 200 young adults, right? And so new people come in and out each week, and when I would meet girls for the first time, they would always ask me like, so what do you do, right? That's like, what's your name, what do you do? That's the first two questions they ask you. And so I was like, oh yeah, I'm currently working the ER, and I'm applying med schools, right? So this is before I made a decision. And all the girls were like, oh yeah, that's so cool, like blah, blah, blah. But then when I switched, they would ask me the same question. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm working the ER, but I'm going to seminary in the fall. And they're like, oh, okay. Like, nice knowing you. So yeah, it was just like different responses, but from different people. But I think I always worried what people would think of me, that like I couldn't make it. But I think I learned that like it doesn't really, people don't really care. It's ultimately like what God has for your life. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, you do cry a lot. Yeah, I can't feel my tongue. I'm gonna be completely honest with you right now. My tongue is numb. All right. So last question. Just like on the TV show or YouTube video on Hot Ones, it's called The Last Dab. And so what it is, it's the most concentrated, and you just put a little bit more.
Okay.
You don't have to, but it's something we're gonna do. Last wing, hottest sauce. What is that called?
Well, it's a picture of the Grim Reaper, and it says, Hellfire hot sauce, fear this, the world's hottest pepper. Dang.
Yeah, so my tongue's numb, so I don't know if I'm gonna feel this, but we're gonna go for it.
Okay.
I'm gonna do yours, or are you gonna do yours?
You do mine. You can determine. Oh, if it comes out.
This is.
Sometimes on those Heinz ketchup balls, you hit the 57. Oh. That's yours.
Okay.
Okay, equal amounts.
All right, brother. It was nice knowing you. Wow. I don't know if I want to do all this. I might tap him. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Ready?
Oh, that's really hot.
It hurts to open your mouth.
Shoot. Okay.
You finish it?
I feel like every time you open your mouth to inhale,
It
like,
hurts.
Yeah.
Hurts to breathe.
All right, you gotta read the next question. All right.
Growing up, all I knew you as was in Pastor P.DL's sermon illustrations on how to date correctly. How are you able to manage a relationship the quote-unquote right way? How do you grow more as an eligible boyfriend or girlfriend for a healthy relationship? Also, what do you personally look for in a wife? And, oh God.
All right, that's a lot of questions. Okay. Yeah, man, I didn't always date the right way. Yeah, just oh man. Yeah, I don't think I was always the best boyfriend. I think I would kind of caution this to high schoolers and college students even, is like, yeah, I think finding the right time to date is really important, and I think it's not in high school, and possibly not even in college.
How are you talking about?
Yeah. One thing my dad always says is if you look at the creation account in Genesis chapter 2 and 3, 1, 2, and 3, but especially Genesis 1, God creates Adam first, right? Then he creates Eve as his wife. But in between that stage, God gives Adam work to do, which is to name all the animals and to take care of the garden. And so before Adam even has a wife, God gives him work to do. He gives him a calling and a vocation. And I think that's what's important for young men is like my challenge for young men before you start looking for your Eve, proverbially, is do you know the calling God has for your life? Because that chronological order is important. For example, let's say as a young man, you're called to missions, right? You meet this great, awesome girl, but you don't know your calling yet. The calling may have come later. And so after you're married, you might be called to missions, but she isn't. And so now you have callings that conflict, right? And so what God has called you to is now in conflict with your current union state of marriage. And so because you are one, that's the biggest covenant that's upheld. And so one person has the desires and dreams to go onto the mission field, the other strongly doesn't. And so there will always be tension there. And we've seen that a lot in the mission field, where one spouse is called and the other isn't. And oftentimes it ends up in divorce. So my thing is like, don't date just for dating's sake, but date for the purpose of marriage. And to marry means to know, like to be ready for marriage is to know what your calling is. And if you don't know your calling yet, then I would say even just hold off from dating. The other thing is, I think Pastor P.DL said this to me, is like he'll allow Manny to date when she knows how to handle rejection well. And so if it's hard for me to handle rejection. Like last year, when I asked a girl out and she said no, it was pretty hard for me. But I think if you can handle it in a mature way, it'll always be hard. Rejection's it's never easy, you know? And that's fine. But being able to handle it maturely and not be like angry and be like, well, I hate you, or like, you don't see what you're missing out on, like this package and all that stuff, right? But yeah, if you can handle rejection easily. The other thing is like last year, just my friends were like egging me on or urging me to ask out like so and so for my church, and I kind of was like, yeah, why not? You know, she's cute. But I think that why not question, and I'll share this next week, is really dangerous. If we do big things, and if we make big choices in our lives, kind of driven by that question of like, why not? That doesn't honor Christ. And it reflects that we haven't been thinking and praying a lot about this decision. When you ask out a girl, or when you make a choice to commit to this college, it has to be driven by a why. There has to be a why that drives that decision, because that means you've prayed enough about it, and that you found in this person something in Christ that draws you to them. That there is a why and there's a positive that you can move towards. Yeah, so I think like just if you approach dating very haphazardly and kind of like casually, then your relationship will be casual, and it won't amount to much more than that. So those are some things I learned. I was not a good boyfriend. Some cool tips that really helped me when I was dating was, one thing we did was, there was a part where when I was dating that we might have argued a little bit more than usual. And a lot of it was like because of my own sinful nature and her sinful nature. And so what we did was we took 1 Corinthians 3, 4 through 7, and we kind of like parsed it out phrase by phrase. So that's 1 Corinthians 13, it's a very famous chapter about love. And it starts off from verse 4, like love is patient, love is kind, right? So then we would take time, and I would ask her, hey, is my love for you patient? And she would say, well, in the past so-and-so months, it really hasn't been. Like, there are times when, like, when we were waiting to, like, when you were waiting for me in the car, like, you were just, like, really upset when I came out late. And I think your love can be more patient for me in this way. And I was like, oh, well, thanks for sharing that. That's communication. And then she would ask me the same question. And I'd say, well, your love has been really patient, so that's really good for you. And then we'd move on to the next one, like love is kind. And then so I ask her, has my love for you recently been kind? Or is it marked by, like, just being really short and, like, easily angered and annoyed? And that helped us to really, those kind of exercises help us to make our relationship really Christ-centered. And so when we ended our relationship, I think we ended it really well. And I think we were able to because by God's grace, our relationship throughout was really Christ-centered. And so we were able to end it in a way that I think glorified Christ, even the way that we split apart. But yeah, the question again is like, how can I be an eligible bachelor? So a lot of questions I like to ask people is like, oh, what do you look for in a spouse? Or like, what's your non-negotiable or preferences? And oftentimes we can fixate on like what we want in the other person. But it's important to recognize the ways that we should grow up and change. If we desire maturity in the other person, are we mature ourselves? If we desire responsibility, are we responsible? Or are we using them as kind of an excuse to cover up for our blemishes? So what do I look for personally in a wife? To go off of that short answer. Man, yeah, I don't know. I just have a couple rules. One is like, as much as I can, I would prefer not to start a relationship off long distance. So I just think that it's important to really get to know the person well before you date them. And a lot of times, really the arena where you can really get to know someone is in ministry. Because if you sit across from them at coffee, it's pretty easy to show the best parts of yourself that you want to show, like social media. But in ministry, when things are going south and there's no one there to really help, like how does this person respond? Are they really flustered? Do they curse up a storm? Do they show everyone grace and compassion? So that's when you get to really know someone. I think it's in the context of ministry. But yeah, I think a girl who can sing always gets me. Yeah. A girl who can sing or is good at sports is really cool. Or if she can like write well, like articulate her thoughts really well, that's always attractive. I think those three things are like, they just attract me more.
Dude, that last one was rough.
Dude, yeah. Now it's subsiding.
Dude, you had like a full conversation. I wasn't even paying attention to the stuff you were saying, dude. That hurt.
That hurt a lot. Yeah. The other ones were.
I was crying, bro.
Dude, that was really, really hot.
All right, well, we made it. We made it all the way through. We learned a little bit more about our youth pastor. We had hot wings and hotter questions. It's been like about over an hour, and so we are all set. That concludes episode 1. Is there anything you want to close with? Anything that you have to say?
Thank you, Ryan. Great questions, and thanks for getting the wings and the sauces too. And thanks, Wings of Winter Garden.
Yeah, special shout out to Wings of Winter Garden, again sponsored. If anyone would like to come up here and have me ask them questions, we're more than welcome to have you guys up here to feel the pain that we went through. But yeah, it's a blast. He said he wants to be up here.
Let's be here. Okay. Stick around for games for the next hour and a half. We'll play some board games. Just chill. Yeah. Okay. Chill play out.
I'm like, were you sweating?
I just cried. I do it all the time. That's my other part. All right. Thanks, guys.
It.